Okay, picture this. You're just sitting there minding your own business, and suddenly, your phone starts ringing. If you're anything like me, you probably just stare at the screen, literally holding your breath, waiting for it to go to voicemail so you can immediately text them back. Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right into the absolute dread of a ringing phone. And spoiler alert, it doesn't mean you're just being difficult. There are actual hardwired psychological mechanisms at play here. Let's get into it.
So here's a question for you. Would you rather text for hours than talk on the phone for literally 1 minute? If you're nodding your head right now, you are definitely not alone. For a huge chunk of us, the answer is a massive, resounding yes. But this isn't just a quirky modern habit. It's actually a deeply rooted response tied to how our brains process social situations. When that phone rings, it triggers this highly specific kind of avoidance. But why exactly does that happen?
That brings us to Section 1, the phone call paradox.
The whole issue here isn't that call avoiders are antisocial. Not at all. It's actually a massive clash in communication styles, specifically how our internal processing collides with external pressure. Think about it. Texting is basically a safe zone. It gives you this beautiful gift of processing time. You can play out different scenarios, draft your thoughts, and rely on the ultimate safety net, the backspace key. Plus, you've got receipts, a written record of exactly what was said. But a phone call? Yeah. A phone call strips all of that away in a split second. It demands an immediate, on-the-spot response. No takebacks, no edits. And because you can't curate your response, it spikes this intense fear of saying the wrong thing or even facing rejection. Your entire social buffer just vanishes.
Which leads perfectly into our next piece of the puzzle, Section 2, the intrusion on autonomy.
Here's the thing about a ringing phone. It is an entirely imposed structure. This is such a fascinating psychological concept to me. A call is essentially someone else demanding your immediate attention, completely disregarding whatever it is you're doing right now. And psychology tells us that highly internally driven people naturally resist external control. So, to a brain that's wired for autonomy, an unexpected call feels like, well, it feels like a rule you never agreed to follow. It registers as this jarring intrusion on your personal independence. It's basically a direct hijacking of your own time.
Now let's look at what happens during the actual call in Section 3, processing and sensory overload. You know, people who absolutely hate phone calls usually share a very specific psychological trait, and it's called high self-monitoring. Basically, this means you are constantly, and I mean constantly, evaluating your own words, your tone of voice, and exactly how you're landing with the other person. And since we already established there's no edit button on a call, high self-monitors become hyper-aware of every single thing they say. It creates this intense, suffocating anxiety because you're absolutely terrified of making a mistake you can't undo.
But hey, the pressure of monitoring yourself is only half the battle. The other major issue? Phone calls completely strip away your visual context. When we're talking face-to-face, our brains are acting like supercomputers, relying on heightened sensory processing. We're picking up on subtle micro-expressions, shifts in body language, all these tiny visual cues to figure out what the other person actually means. But on a phone call, every single one of those crucial data points is just gone. So because you're missing those visual cues, your brain literally has to work twice as hard to fill in the blanks. You're basically flying blind. You're sitting there trying to gauge the mood, the intent, and the reaction of the person on the other end using absolutely nothing but their disembodied voice. It's no wonder you feel tired afterward. This causes a massive spike in cognitive load, which leads straight to overthinking and just complete mental exhaustion.
And that exhaustion sets the stage for Section 4, the post-call rumination trap.
Let's walk through this mental trap that so many of us fall into. Step 1. The call finally ends. Phew, right? Well, not exactly. Step 2. Because you don't have a chat history to scroll back through, your brain just starts looping the conversation from memory. You start agonizing over specific details and dissecting the tone of voice they used. Which leads to Step 3, searching for hidden meanings. You zoom in on tiny things like a really brief reply and think, wait, did they sound mad? Did I sound totally weird? And boom, you're in Step 4, a vicious spinning cycle of stress and mental fatigue. Honestly, this rumination trap is exactly what programs your brain to avoid the next phone call, just to protect yourself from doing the whole exhausting routine all over again.
Zooming out a bit, we hit our final phase in Section 5, protecting your social energy.
Phone calls are incredibly high-intensity interactions, and there is nowhere to hide. You know, not everyone gets energized by socializing. For a lot of people, it's a massive drain on the battery. When you're stuck on a call, you are trapped in that high-pressure environment until someone officially says goodbye. So hitting decline or letting it go to voicemail, that's not you being rude. It doesn't mean you don't care about the person calling. It's actually a highly deliberate protective mechanism. You're just shielding your limited mental space from unpredictable demands and keeping your social energy from completely burning out.
I want you to think about it this way. Hitting decline isn't a flaw. It's actually a sign that your mind values nuance, control, and thoughtful connection way more than instant reaction. Talk about a game changer, right? This totally reframes the whole narrative. Avoiding calls just means you prefer to engage when you can be intentional and present, rather than feeling rushed and reactive. It is a completely valid psychological preference for how you authentically connect with people.
So, we've covered a whole lot of ground in this explainer today, from the suffocating pressure of high self-monitoring to the exhausting trap of post-call overthinking. And honestly, once you understand the actual psychology behind why your brain freaks out over a ringing phone, you kind of can't unsee it. So, I'm going to leave you with this one question to chew on. Now that you see the pattern and you know the completely valid science behind it, will you finally stop feeling guilty about hitting decline? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer today, and hopefully this helps you feel a whole lot better about letting it go to voicemail.